the Dim Din Podcast, a safe space to talk about misconceptions, perceptions, assumptions, and frustrations. Join us for conversations and stories that explore how embracing our differences leads to a balanced, strong, and harmonious world.
Hello and welcome to the Dim Din Podcast, your very safe space to have conversations about perceptions, expectations, misconceptions, and frustrations amongst Africans in the diaspora and our relatives and friends back home. I am your host, Becca, and we're here to have another conversation about another misconception. Or is it? Today, we're focused on the topic, family responsibilities. Whew! This was the very topic that we chose to introduce the Dim Din Podcast to you, and it generated a lot of conversations. People were saying, diasporans are selfish, and others were saying, how dare you call us out? Well, you've been waiting for too long, and today we're going to have this conversation once and for all. Diasporans are selfish. They leave Africa, travel overseas, and forget all about their relatives and friends back home. They choose to enjoy and just keep everything to themselves. Is that a misconception or reality? To have this conversation with me today, I have two special guests, my very own parents, my father, who, if you know me, you know I talk about my father all the time because he's the very foundation to the person that I am today. And his beautiful queen, the Mamina Power Incessef, as we call her, Mr. and Mrs. Sise. Thank you for coming on board.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. I'll pass it over to you to just introduce yourselves a little bit more, and then we can move on with the conversation.
Okay, as you've already heard, I'm Mrs. Patrick Sise, and I'm a mom, and I'm in Canada. I've been in Canada for the last probably 12 years now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's nice to have you.
Wonderful.
To have this conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
And thanks for having us. I'm Patrick Sise, of course, Patrick, and sitting next to my darling here. I'm from Sierra Leone. My wife is from Zimbabwe. We met in the UK, so it's been a long journey. I lived in the UK for about 7 years, so I've been in the diaspora quite some time, and then moved to Canada. But I'm one of those diasporans that travel back home very regularly, and I'm happy to be here to have this conversation.
Absolutely. So the very two people that are very well equipped to have this conversation, because you both have relatives and friends back home as well, right? And today we have the Zimbabwe and the Sierra Leone, and let's see what the differences and the similarities are in all of that. So to start the conversation, once upon a time, we were all in Africa. And some of the conversations that people have today about us are conversations that I personally had about people that were in the diaspora at the time. Now, is it a misconception that diasporans are selfish and they just focus on themselves? Or is it the reality? Over to you.
I think it's a misconception.
Okay.
The diasporans are not selfish. Mm-hmm. We're actually very nice people. Mm-hmm. And I think we do care for others more than what people think.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So you're taking sides. It's a misconception, period. Over to you. Would you say it's a misconception or reality?
I think this is one of those topics that it depends on who you're talking to.
Okay.
Because everybody's reality is different. And sometimes it depends on what kind of circumstances you are, what are some of the things that you're exposed to, will make you decide whether you feel diasporans are selfish. And it also depends on what are you getting from that diaspora, or what are you not getting? What are your expectations? What are your anticipations? There's so many factors to it. So to me, to say diasporans are selfish is a misconception.
Okay.
But at the same time, everybody's reality is different.
Switzerland. We're not taking sides. But I think you did take a side to say it is a misconception, right? But however, it all depends on the person's individual perspective. Okay, so now what I want us to do is to take a step back into the perspectives of, step a foot into the shoes of our brothers and sisters back home. So once upon a time, we were all there, and we know what the realities were back home. Let's explore those realities a little bit. When it comes to some of the challenges that we hear from our relatives and friends back home that they're experiencing in these different countries, and I don't know about Zimbabwe, but Sierra Leone especially, what are some of the things that you feel are causing them to feel the way they feel about not having enough and expecting so much from us?
Good question.
Okay.
The reality is the concept of family is different from the diasporan perspective compared to back home.
Okay.
Back home, I remember growing up, your family goes beyond just mom, dad, and siblings.
Absolutely.
The neighbors are members of your family.
Absolutely.
Members of the church community are members of your family. Everybody plays a part. It's like everyone has a role to play in your growing up, which makes it look as if it's a kind of an investment in you. And it's an investment that some people will think could yield dividend, or sometimes may not yield dividend. So when you sit down and you're back in the diaspora and you're doing well in people's perspective, and they find your number, of course they're going to call you. And if things are hard for them, they will express that. Now, is that too much expectation, too much anticipation? Again, subject to different opinion. But because so many people play a part in building you up to where they think you are right now, everybody feels that they've played a part in that global village raising a child. So now when you find yourself in a place where they expect that return on investment, there is an expectation. And when those expectations are not met, then the concept of selfishness start coming into play. You tend to hear that even from friends, people you grow up with, thinking that we were all having these conversations about how people go out there, they don't pay attention to us anymore. And you were part of that conversation as well.
Absolutely.
But then once you come over here, I'm sure we might talk about the realities of the diaspora as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you find out that the reality does not match the expectation.
Absolutely.
Before you got into the sea.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Absolutely.
And of course, those are some of the things that put some of those kind of a gap between those two groups.
Absolutely. That's really very well discussed, like the way you put that, because we all took part in that dance of, when I travel in less than 2 years, I will make sure I file for you, you come join me. We did that. Like we all had things that we believed was the case, because here apparently was where life was easy, you pick money and trees and all of those things. What are some of the realities in Zimbabwe from your perspective?
I think it's more or less the same as what my husband put it. The concept of growing up in a community, it takes a village to raise a child. And when that child goes abroad, the expectation is to also take care of other children that are behind or some children within the community. But then what is not understood is when you get to abroad or to the diaspora, the realities of the diaspora, people are not aware. There's not that awareness. Maybe there is now today, but before there wasn't. So then you bring up this misconception of saying, you know what, diasporans are selfish. But have we got an understanding of what's happening to the diasporans in the diaspora? So more or less the way my husband here put it.
Absolutely. And I think a big part that I see too, like recently, last year when I completed my, before I completed my master's degree, when I went back to Sierra Leone to do my placement, we had a conversation, and I did the placement with LIWAF. We had a conversation with a few people within the community who were working as teachers or at the hospital, and there were so many of them who had worked for about a year or more and were not getting paid because apparently they were expected to serve for multiple years before you are considered a valuable member for them to start paying you. And some of them who work like in like the teaching profession or so were getting paid like literally 300,000 leones or 400,000 leones. Wow. I don't even know what that is in dollars. Maybe what, 20, 30?
Yeah, about $30, yeah.
Yeah, and that's literally what they have to survive on for the month with their family members. So I guess in that sense too, like talking about the economy and what it's like back there, or some of those systemic barriers, would you say that's a factor that contributes to all of that?
Significantly. It's not like those dependency in terms of relationship does not exist in other places, but where the economic situation of the country creates opportunities for people to strive, to actually thrive, it's easier. You can say, for example, have a relative back home and say, have a conversation about, can you imagine if I send you $1,000 to invest, what's the return on investment going to be? Let's say figuratively, somebody come back and say, I can make an additional $100 a month. It's easy then to go into a kind of a scheme, say, okay, I'll put in the $1,000, you make $100 a month, take $50 out of that 100, save it to repay the $1,000 over 20 months. And then the remaining $50, which is the net profit you're making, keep 25 for yourself and keep 25 for me. In 20 months, within 2 years, if you make that $1,000, if the economic situation allows you to thrive and make your words match your actions, then you can become independent very quickly.
It's a lot of work though.
It is.
Or so it may seem.
I know, but then because the economic situation does not match, and it's like you're throwing straws at somebody who is drowning, they will take and they will say yes to whatever you offer to them. And then what happens then? The lack of trust comes into play, because if they're not able to meet the agreement, then what next? You see, there's so much that the governments can do to make things at least predictable, and that's the one difference. I know we'll talk about what is the situation in this part of the world. Here, there are standards, there are structures that have been put in place that I know that if I work, I get paid.
Absolutely.
Yep.
If I take services, I'm supposed to pay for them.
Yep.
And diasporans, even when they come in earlier, usually fall into that trap. Either it's because of the residue of the situations back home, and by the time you know you start taking loans and debts and not paying in time, your credit gets damaged. And the time you're about to settle, you want to take a big loan to get a mortgage, you run into trouble. So I agree totally. Government in our African countries need to really start doing things for the people back home, to make it easier for that relationship between diasporans and their family back home.
Wonderful, wonderful. And to add to that, Mrs. Sise, I'm saying mommy and Mrs. Sise all at once.
It's okay.
There's that other piece where I've had friends, say like my one of my best friends back home, Adama, went to China to study, got a master's degree in public health, came back home, no jobs, and had to start a salon for herself to sort of like start generating income. So she chose to do something completely different from what she studied, because they did not have that option to get a job in her area of study. And there's a lot of people back home, like my auntie who also studied in China, that there's a lot of people back home who say they have all these degrees, but they don't have jobs. And so that is also causing that sense of, well, I'll just sit home or go and get another degree, or I feel like there's nothing to do, it's not my fault. What do you have to say to that?
It's nobody's fault that there aren't any jobs. The government has to help in that respect, as already highlighted by my husband. However, there is a little bit of dignity in doing something. Even if you're qualified, you've done a PhD, whatever degree you hold, if you can't find a job that will match the kind of qualification you have, try something. Try a small business to uplift yourself, to have that little respect for yourself, some dignity, to work hard for yourself. It pays to work for yourself because it empowers you to be able to fend for yourself, to do something for yourself. Yes, you can sit down at home, but who's going to feed you? You need to be fed. No. Yeah, honestly, yeah, the expectation is that diasporans will feed us, but the diasporans themselves have to feed themselves.
True. That was a joke, by the way. If you're just joining us, this is the Dim Dim podcast, and I am your host, Becca, and we're just having conversations today about family responsibilities and some of the misconceptions of our relatives and friends back home, thinking that diasporans are selfish. Now, we just finished the part where we tried to explore the realities of our relatives and friends back home. We're now going to dive into exploring our own realities in the diaspora. There's a very generous viewer who has donated $50 for one lucky winner at the end of the 6th episode. We would share the answer today to a question that we'll ask at the end of this second segment that we're going to have. Keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, and I'll tell you how to submit that answer. Now, to our own realities in the diaspora. What would you say to our relatives and friends back home who are watching about some of our realities here in this part of the world?
Well, the reality in the diaspora is that there's a lot of responsibilities that people don't even talk about. We have bills to pay. There's a lot of bills in the diaspora as compared to back home. We have mortgages, rents, car loans, insurances, phone bills, water,
heat,
gas, electricity, all that is supposed to be taken care of every month. And how much are you earning again?
Yeah,
that's the other question. You work hard, but you get paid just enough to get by. So you're living paycheck to paycheck. However, on top of that, you also have other responsibilities. Children, food to put on the table. How do you do it? And of course, maybe a phone call from home here and there, requesting some assistance. Those are the realities here in the diaspora.
And so some people then would say that even if you share that with them, they'll tell you, oh, but you are still blessed to be in overseas, and if you don't consider it a blessing, then let's switch places. What do you have to say to people like that?
Yes, and that even question of blessing, what does that mean?
What does it look like?
What is blessing? Is it material resources? Sometimes it takes me back to that story in the Bible, the biblical story about the talents. Blessings are like talents. And everybody has talents. It's a matter of identifying what talents you have, recognizing them, and actually applying them, using them. Not just for your own benefit, but for the benefit of people around you as well. With the story of the talent, 3 servants were given talents. 2 of them went and multiplied them and came up with more, and 1 of them decided to bury them. And that's how we are as human beings. Sometimes, like I have a sister who is very talented musician. Give her a contract to come up with a song, the next day, boom, it's out there. But the thing is, in the diaspora, like my wife said, people have to work hard. Sometimes people hold on to 2 or 3 jobs.
Yeah.
And people do jobs in this part of the world that they don't even consider doing back home. And that is the thing sometimes. Even when we say the government does not employ me, can I create an employment for myself? I sit in front of my father's house every day. I see people carrying loads on their head of business to sell. Fruits, if it is fruit season, cassava and things like that, to sell. Now, do these family members have diaspora and relatives they expect to send? Sometimes that expectation also slows us down. Because if I'm expecting somebody to be sending remittance for me, then why do I have to make an effort?
Exactly.
I don't have to bother. But if I don't have anyone that is going to be taking up that piece for me, I can't sit down. I will get up and do something. I will go to the back of my yard, till the ground, plant some things, to start looking at how do I, that's a place to start. I'll go to the villages, if I have a small capital, and see what I can exploit out of that as well. So there are opportunities. It's not a matter of saying, okay, well, if it's still that bad, come back and join us. Well, you're already saying it's bad for you down there. Why are you inviting me to come and join you? Why not encourage me to find out how can I help? What is going on? Is there anything I can do from this side of the world? Because pulling me to your side to say, things are rough for me on this side. If you're complaining over there as well, I'm not expecting you to complain, then come and join me. That automatically tells me that you're selfish.
We're switching it.
Yeah, you're selfish.
Oh my gosh.
I like that.
You can't find the answers for yourself, and you want me to come and join you to look for that answer that you cannot find?
And you say diasporans are selfish. Hello? You were going to add something.
Well, for me, you cannot ask me to come and join you so that we can sit together and do nothing. I think maybe the question which should be, or we say, with the little that you're helping us with, whatever it is, how can we multiply it together. Working together, so that
togetherness.
The burden is less on you who's in the diaspora, and also we get to chip in and also get what we need by working together, rather than pulling me back so we can both suffer in poverty.
And that's a really good point. I remember when I just came, and the first job that I got, it was not even a job per se. It's like an organization that teaches you skills, that taught skills to like help you settle into like workplace and stuff. And the first paycheck they gave me, I think it was about $400 or so, where Daddy sat me down and say, your first paycheck has to go to everybody back home who has played a role in your upbringing one way or the other, talking about like a village raising the child. So to me, that in itself sort of like would influence me to take sides that diasporans are not selfish, because to be able to do that and pass that knowledge on to me, that's something that I will pass on to my own children as well. And that tells me that even though you're here, you have your like cultural values and stuff like that with you that you're passing on to your own children as well. So when it comes to that piece of like working together, to me, that was your way of demonstrating that. But we've also had a lot of diasporans complain about, I work so hard, I go out at -40, walk in the snow, work 2, 3, 4 jobs. People are literally feeling depressed and anxious and falling sick consistently. And they send money back home to relatives to say, help me build a home, or help me do so and so, so that when I cannot do this anymore, I have a safe place to come to. But then they go home and realize there's nothing to show for all of that money that they've sent. What do you have to say to that?
Oh, that's a story that a lot of, I would say 40 to 60% of diasporans have experienced, starting from even purchasing of the land. Because sometimes when you're there, now we are more advanced. People now have cameras that you can plant back home and then use your Wi-Fi to be able to actually look and see what is happening back home with your project. It's not very common, but there's some cameras that you can now use. If you do not land on a reliable person to work with you in developing a project back home, just gather the money, send it to people and say, make a party and have fun.
Because that's what will happen.
That's what will happen. And then it does not just stop there, because now it now start building controversy between you and people you're supposed to care for and people that care about you. But again, it boils down to why will. Sometimes people do not go with the intention to what I can describe as defraud you. But communication, honesty, being upfront, because don't just take advantage to say, because this person is not here, they won't know what they don't know. When they come back here, we will sort it out.
And they try to juju you on top of that.
Worst case scenario, I'll go to mom and dad and we will discuss a family kind of conversation. Yeah, a lot of friends have shared those kind of scenarios and stories. But on the flip side, though, if you meet somebody who is really honest and trustworthy, because when you look at it, you can say, I'm going to just put a pause on my project, raise money, travel, do what I can, pause, come back. But then even the money you're taking to travel that regularly can push the project up a little bit faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, so that is a common trend, but there are good ones. And that is where I say individuals' reality contributes to this debate, which side people will take. Some people have had very good experiences. Some people have had bad experiences. And you want to blame the people back home, but sometimes some people, I think that's where the communication, if people are just honest to say, yes, I know we're working on this, but I'm in trouble, help. It's one of two things. Yes, I can help, or no, I can't. Or here is a suggestion of something you must consider. Because sometimes those conversations can also take things a long way forward. But when you decide, to me it's even disrespectful, when you decide we have a conversation, we know what the plan is, I'm sitting here now, discuss with my wife, because what our family members tend to forget sometimes is I'm here, I'm working, but I'm not working alone.
Not at all. Not at all.
And women work harder than men. You see that more.
I work night shift, right?
You see that in this part of the world. Women work way harder than men. And sometimes even within the household, a woman earns more than the man.
Hey, yeah.
But
No, but
sometimes
that's true.
our ego does not allow us to even share that component back home. Because I'm the man in Africa, you don't even question what I do. I just take all the money and do what I need to do. If I give you something, you're lucky. But it should not happen like that. Because we're both working. We have children. I have to make sure that my home has what it wants. My children are taken care of. And then if there's leftover, in communication with my wife, we do what we need to do to support back home and develop our project back home.
Absolutely.
My case is even more peculiar because I'm from Sierra Leone. My wife is from Zimbabwe.
Ha. How's that going?
Now, if I just focus on looking at what is the best for my own family, what about my wife's family? You see? So those conversations have to happen. And as diasporans, we also have to be honest about our realities with our families. Even when they tend to not believe you sometimes, but still just be honest with them. Tell them, say it as it is.
Charity begins at home.
It does. It does. And that aspect where Daddy touched on having a wife from a different culture, and you have your own family as well, right? Who, if you're thinking about making room for like family support, then you're not only thinking about his family, you're also thinking about your family as well. And most of your family members, if not all, are in England, correct?
Correct, yeah.
How do you feel about that? Like, how do you navigate that aspect of things? And do you feel like you're fully like involved in like the decision-making process? Do you feel like it's imbalance in the way things work in that area? Like, what can you add to that?
I'm consulted. I mean, there's transparency. My husband is very transparent. I'll give you that.
Listen.
Whether I like it or not, he is transparent. Whether I'm okay with it or not, he is still transparent, and I give him that. Thank you. Anyways, so with that, my family, we've worked together. We work together as a unit. Like I said, sometimes it's not about being in the diaspora, but it's about communication. If somebody's got an opportunity, who can you help, right? We work together, and then we build together. So say, for example, me being here today is because of my sister. She came into England, but she came in, it was an opportunity for a holiday. She was just a vacation with a friend, but she took that opportunity to say, okay, what best situation can I make of this? So let me not just come on vacation. Let me do something so I can come and work and go to school. And she did that. And then when she did that, she felt, no, I'm alone here. I don't want to have this burden to care for everybody, because it's not her own responsibility to look after everybody. But then she decided, no, in order to lessen the burden, let me bring one other, my sisters. And then from then on, they came, worked together, and bring another. So as a collective, they started building and started bringing each other. I'm not saying that it didn't have its challenges. It does have challenges, because bringing someone into the diaspora, you have to decide, is this person going to do the needful? Because it's not easy. Take Canada, for instance. -40, you're supposed to go out to work. Does that person I'm bringing want to go out to go to work at
Probably
-40
not.
temperature? Probably not. But they still need to eat. They still need to feed. They still need to dress warm. I cannot continue to have those responsibilities when you're here. So now that we're together, we work together. Let's bring somebody here. This is what you need to do. So you need to have an understanding from where you're coming from and where you're going. What do you really want? Those realities. Diaspora is a challenge. It has its challenges. So you're here. You do the needful, you work, and you work hard. And when you do that, you achieve what you want to achieve. But then at the same time, when you work as a collective, you lessen the burden on one person, because it should never be one person's responsibility to care for the family. We work together as a unit. We care for each other. That way, you are okay, I'm okay.
I really like that point of like togetherness that you did bring up. If you're just joining us, we're having a beautiful, wonderful, lovely conversation today about family responsibilities. And I want to use this opportunity to give a shout out to Icicle Clothing, the beautiful designer who designs most of my clothes, if not all, that I wear for this podcast. Keep an ear out. We still are going to ask that question that will get you to win that $50. Okay. So bringing it back to where we left off, that whole piece of togetherness, because that's the part that I want us to sort of like end this conversation in, that aspect of balance and how do we work together. Say you, for example, Daddy, like I see you work so hard. And when it's time for vacations and stuff, you don't go for vacations to like countries that like the Bahamas and like actually go on vacation, right? Because you're thinking about going home, whether to complete a project that you started or to see family. And when you go home on vacations, I don't see you vacating there either, right? Like you don't have time to rest and just like breathe and take time for yourself, because you're busy running around and getting stuff done. Yet you have all these family members back home. I personally don't see that balance in like supporting, like giving you the support that you need, that I, as your child, looking from the outside, think that you need for you to be able to actually go and rest and not do the things back there as well. And I've also had some people say, oh, you've been there for so long and like there's so many siblings and they're not coming, like it's just your daughter that's here. Like, what do you have to say to that piece?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate what my wife shared and the fact that they've been able as a family pull each other over, and now almost all of them are in the diaspora. The first time I left Sierra Leone, I traveled to the Gambia. And when I was in the Gambia, I was there as an expatriate. By the time you know it, I brought a sister over. I brought a brother over, because at the time the Gambia was way better economically than Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone was going through tough times. There was a rebel war and a few other things going on.
Absolutely.
I brought 3 siblings and my daughter, of course yourself. You were a kid at the time, so you were not privy to all of that. But taking you all out of that situation, come to the Gambia. That would have been like the nice kind of an example of the kind of model that I saw that we could have continued. But again, with families, yes, it's not always roses.
All that glitters.
Yeah, sometimes it could be thorns. Yeah, but
multi-layered.
those are things that should not impact that thing of working together to build everybody up, because it is true. If you are the only one that have that opportunity to help, then instead of everybody chipping in, you find yourself chipping in the larger share when situations come that you cannot avoid chipping in. But there have been opportunities that probably maybe we never took advantage of. Coming to the diaspora these days has been challenging. We've tried.
Absolutely.
My wife and I have tried to invite siblings to this country. It's not gone through. Because once you've gone past that age and you're just a brother or sister, to work something out to get you over here is an impossible task. So it's not for lack of trying. But at the same time, it's not just everybody cannot be here. It's what effort are we making to see if empower people back home. That is where you can see, because if I cannot empower you to be independent and be able to do some certain things for yourself back home, what are the chances that if you come over here, we can even be able to work together?
Be toi.
You see? Because most people are talking about, like, before I came over here, I never knew what things were going to be like. And first time I was in England, everything I was doing was to support my family back home. But then if you continue doing that continuously, it's like the Chinese will say, teach somebody to fish so that they can fish for themselves, and which is something we try to do. But if you say you're just feeding all the time, it's not going to work. And then you get to the point where you stop because you're no longer able to do it. What happens? Everything you've done,
You become the
out
bad
of the
guy.
window, and you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
But, and I'll just finalize, because I know we're wrapping up, that at the end of the day, this is a multifactorial kind of situation. There's so many things involved. Because to sit here and say people back home are not able to fend for themselves, sometimes the environment contributes to making that challenging. I'll still hold on to that. Because the people, nobody will want to just sit idly and say, I don't want to strive. And I don't want to make something out for myself. People are trying. Now you have what they call, like in Sierra Leone, you have these loan scheme, microcredits that are just pillaging this environment. They are not afraid. They don't even ask for collateral and just give people heavy loans just to start chasing them and running after them, bringing police to come and take money. And the interest rates are so high. How do you survive?
It's
like even when you're making effort, you're working for somebody else. Or you end up getting stressed with issues. And that is where sometimes I think diasporans can come in. If we have that honesty and people who are doing a little bit better, because not everyone in the diaspora is doing well. And there are lots of people back home that are doing way better than diasporans back here. Sometimes you go on holiday and you see how people are living and stuff like that. You ask yourself, what is wrong with me?
They have maids, they have vehicles, they have drivers.
What is wrong with what is going on? it makes you have some second opinion. And people have, you're building one house. Some people have 5 houses scattered all over the country.
Honestly,
and they've
though.
never been out of the country. So could we take that question and go back and say, in Africa, the well-to-do are selfish?
Okay. Okay. Sounds like another
Because charity
conversation
begins
for
at
another
home.
day.
Yeah.
Are they creating enough opportunities to lift the struggling up? Or should all that be left for diasporans?
It's a good question.
That's another topic for another
Are
day.
politicians selfish?
Hey, the politicians I run away
Should
from.
they
them.
be crafting laws to help the less privileged?
Totally.
Or focus on making laws that will enhance their retirement and pensions? So that's all I see.
Yeah.
Especially from my country, Sibelius.
It's everywhere.
So this is a big topic and a big discussion that we cannot finish in one conversation. Maybe you should think about additional podcasts about other people. But yeah, I'll wrap up
Oh,
there.
thank you. There were so many things to pick from that, but you articulated that so well that I will not add anything else to that. I just come to you with the question of thinking about the children that we're giving birth to here, that were not born and raised back in Africa. And sometimes I think for myself, like seeing how some of you, like seeing how some of the parents are really like going back and forth and seeing the stressors and like trying to provide for people back home and seeing all the requests that are coming through. I think for myself, there's that need sometimes to avoid contact with some people because I'm like, hey, this is too much pressure. And it's sort of like a one-way street that I try to avoid it sometimes with some people that I can. And the children that are being born here don't have that concept of like community to that extent where it's like, this person is my uncle, that person is my auntie. Like if you tell them this person is my uncle and auntie, they want to know how we're connected, right? As a mom, and knowing what you know about the relationship that we have with family members and friends back home, what can we do to maintain that aspect of community, because it is relevant? At the same time, try and manage those challenges of them feeling pressured by some relatives and friends back home.
Okay, so I would say for starters, no man is an island. Family is very important. A family unit is very important. It's always nice to have somebody who call you and say, how are you? It's always nice to say, oh, my brother is there, my sister is there. However, with the children being born here in the diaspora, yes, they may not have that very much or everyday close contact with their family. But with the social media, you can FaceTime, you can phone, you can engage with them. And when you go on holidays, you can engage with your family. But when it comes to responsibilities, as a child, like as you, Yama, you say you're avoiding people to talk to because you don't want to be asked or you don't want to have
All
those
the time.
challenges. It shouldn't be your responsibility to look after relatives. You have enough on your plate. Some people come to the diaspora, you're here, you're studying, you work hard, you go to school, you also need to work for your bills. You also need to work to put food on your table as you're studying. So you need to have clear communication with whoever it is to say, right now I cannot. I'm faced with certain challenges. However, and it also depends on what they're asking. Sometimes it's a necessity or it's a need. You have to determine, is it a want or a need? But at the same time, you can give, but don't make it, don't encourage it. You're working. You need to focus on your studies. So when you finish your studies, then perhaps when you hold a job, when you finish what you need to do, because at the end of the day, people tend to forget that when you come to the diaspora, you're studying, you're learning, the children here are growing up. They're growing up in a system that helps, that supports. If you're not able to work or if you're not able to do this, they'll be helped. Whereas the governments back home, they don't help. So we need to discourage the dependency syndrome and encourage people to work and encourage people to do the needful. And clear communication is always important. I'm sorry, I'm not able to. I'm at school right now. You studied, you just recently finished your studies.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and the expectation is not for us to say, can you help us with these bills? Can you do this for us? Can you do this for us? Only because we understand that you're studying. And we want you to achieve what you are set to achieve. Because only then will you be able to assist us if you want to.
Absolutely.
It should be a want, if you want to, not that you have to. Gone are those days where children are supposed to look after their parents.
We still will.
Yes,
I pledge on
you
behalf
still
of myself
will,
and the siblings.
that era has passed.
Yeah.
It's no longer an expectation that I will raise you up and then you will look after me.
Yeah. And it is the same thing for us, like the
cannot be.
diaspora and children too, right? We
Yeah.
don't rely on parents to like pay the bills and
No.
like do all of that stuff. We do that part, hey? But really good piece there where you said something about discourage dependency and encourage independence.
Yeah.
Was that how you put it?
That's how it's supposed to be, yeah.
Wonderful. And I think to our relatives and friends back home, then what we'll say, from what I hear you say, is that the children that are born in the diaspora are independent mentally and physically. And when they reach out, it is important to show them that love and care. Show them that you love and care for them and not necessarily just looking for something from them. Let there be that relationship where they can count on you as their auntie and their uncles and just be able to rely on you that way for love and care without it feeling like not a burden, or without it feeling like you tell them about all your problems and want them to help you solve those problems. And I think when we talk about that aspect of the land being rich, the land being raw, and there's so much you can do with it, Mr. Jallo at Liwaf is another good example, who left England to go back to Sierra Leone and start an organization, and he's doing really well for himself. And there are people that are doing well with the little that they have. But all we're saying is that idea of here being the blessed land, of overseas being the blessed land, is not as it appears. Not all that glitters is gold. And you can make the best of where you are if you choose to see the good in that land. Want to say thank you to Isako Designs for my beautiful outfit. And the question for this episode, for that money that I said you'd win, is who is the designer that makes my beautiful outfit? Now, to send the answer to me, don't put it on the Facebook or on the live premiere. Look for Dim Podcast on Facebook and message me the answer. I'll take all of those answers and then we will choose the lucky winner by episode 6 and announce that lucky winner. Thank you all for engaging in this conversation. Thank you for joining me here today. It's been an amazing conversation and I am so, so grateful to have this conversation with you. Until our next episode, Sabe Sandimdim.
The Dim Din Podcast, a safe space to talk about misconceptions, perceptions, assumptions, and frustrations. Join us for conversations and stories that explore how embracing our differences leads to a balanced, strong, and harmonious world.